Hello, my name is Hirose from Enterprise IT Center. Today I'd like to give a presentation on the challenges and approaches for internal systems when an organization of 10,000 people integrates its management. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I joined the company in 2011 and have been developing server setup tools and IaaS layer components for private clouds. As for internal systems, my first experience with internal systems started with the introduction of internal systems in the department I was working in at the time of the management integration. In 2012, and I operated system for about a year before I took over. This year, April, I was transferred to the enterprise development team in the Enterprise IT Center, where I am engaged in the development, operation, and improvement of internal system. In May, I was transferred to ZHD to develop implement and operate internal system for collaborative project among group companies. I think it is easy to imagine what the Enterprise IT Center, to which I belong, does as our so-called information system. We develop, implement, operate, and support internal systems, which is also called corporate IT these days. At the Enterprise IT Center, we have a mission to aim to be the best company to work for by providing internal services and to continue to provide a better environment. In order to achieve this goal, we are constantly making improvements to provide a better environment for line employees, liners. This is today's agenda. After the management integration this year, the Enterprise IT Center has been developing and implementing internal system for collaboration with group companies. Today, I would like to talk about the background of the implementation, the challenges we faced in the project, and how we solved them, and the challenges we will face in the future when we introduce and develop new systems and what we are doing to solve them. Now I would like to start with some background. After the business integration, we had a meeting with Yahoo's corporate IT to discuss how we could collaborate. At the meeting, we discussed what we needed to do and what preparation we should make in order to start a collaborative project, and we decided to implement several systems. The first thing we did was to prepare Confluence for documentation and Jira for task management. These tools are used by both Line and Yahoo. However, when we tried to use the tools used by either of them for the collaborative project, it became difficult to manage access restrictions and also user rights, so we decided to prepare the new one. Now as for Zoom, since we had been using Zoom at Yahoo and in Line on a regular basis, we decided to use them as they were. And since both companies were using SaaS such as Slack and Inbox, we set up a tenant linkage so that they could share information with each other. However, we used a different tool for scheduling and needed to have a separate discussion on how to share it. Today, I would like to talk about the challenges we faced using the schedule adjustment as an example. After scheduling the meeting, I would register the Line meeting attendees in Line's Works and the Yahoo meeting attendees in Yahoo's Exchange. It's easy for one of us to set up a meeting at a different time, and it becomes a waste of time. We were motivated to solve the problem quickly, as we were also meeting with Yahoo to prepare the system to be used across the group companies. However, there was no tool that could synchronize the data of the calendar sharing system used by both companies, so we had to develop one ourselves, which led us to this project. The first thing we were considering was to synchronize the schedule of our employee with each other's schedule. Initially, we were considering this because it would be best if we could both work as well. However, since both companies have 10,000 employees, if we try to synchronize using the API, then there are some limits to the API. So the synchronization would be an hour. So if another schedule came in while waiting for the synchronization, the tool on the side waiting for the synchronization might not notice. Currently, most of our meetings are held via Zoom. We have an average of 140,000 meetings per month on Zoom with a total of 630,000 attendees per month. So if a meeting's room URL is changed 30 minutes before the meeting, the team wastes 10 minutes of time because the participants don't notice the meeting. So if 60,000 people or 1/10 of the average monthly meeting attendees, then that is going to be a huge loss of time. In addition, although we were preparing to collaborate with Yahoo, the synchronization interval would become more serious if we decided to start a collaborative project with another group company in the future. So we decided not to work on the synchronization and the development of the app. The scheduling application we have developed use an APIs of Works and an Exchange to register with a scheduling tool used by both companies. We call this application Meetup. The reason why we developed Meetup is that there is no possibility of duplication with other meetings, and although this application was prepared for collaboration with Yahoo, we decided to develop this application because it is easy to modify in the future if we decide to collaborate with other group companies. And this is a Meetup that we developed. Enter the title of schedule, and you will get the schedule first. The schedule of the person who will participate in the meeting is displayed on the right side of the screen. And since the content of the schedule may contain the personal information or confidential information, the content is hidden from view, and the schedule for the day is displayed on the screen so that you can only judge whether or not there to attend the meetings. Development had gone smoothly up to this point, but we were faced with two challenges. The first one is to limit the number of users who could search, and then second was to limit the number of users who could log. There were the issues we discussed with the security team. The first issue from the line side, and the second issue is on the tools used by the group's company on the Z Holding side. The reason for this restriction is that the Z Holdings is building the system used for collaboration with the Z Holding group, but the users are employees of Yahoo and Line and other companies that are subsidiaries of Z Holdings. For example, let's say there is an external service such as a Meetup, and if we were to use that service and the Meetup would be the same, using an external service, Yahoo and Line had to undergo security checks, and Z Holdings had to undergo security checks in order to launch the service. So we decided to tackle these two issues. We were seconded to Z Holdings to develop. Because of this, we were unable to use the infrastructure resources and development environment. We had to build and prepare both the infrastructure and the development environment from scratch, which was not a challenge, but it was a bit difficult for us. The first is to limit the number of users who can be searched so that the employees who are not related to the collaboration are not displayed. The first is the email address field. When you search for an employee's name, you will probably get a list of suggestions when you enter it. However, if this is implemented, there is a possibility that employees who are not related to the collaboration will be displayed. As I explained earlier, the meetup itself was developed using Z Holdings, so it could not have any employee information. Therefore, when we try to find candidates, we need to search for data from each company's employee information. Since it was difficult, we decided to remove the input candidate function this time. This issue is not a technical solution, but the first step is to reach an agreement with each company in the form of a consent. We are currently discussing with the companies to make it easier for them to collaborate and to create the terms and conditions. After the agreement is reached, we will implement the systems with careful handling of the employees' information. There is one more case in which we search for an employee who is not related to the collaboration, even if there are no suggestions for input. This is when you know the email address for an employee who has nothing to do with the collaboration, or when you search for the wrong email address by a single misspelled word. In order to avoid such cases, it was necessary to have a mechanism to determine the email address before sending requests to Works. For this reason, we developed the Checker API. This API determines if the email addresses in the request is a user that can be searched. If it was a user who should not be searched, we solved the problem by not searching and returning the request. This API requires access to employee information, so instead of using Z Holdings, we set up an API within Line to communicate with a Meetup backend. To summarize the restriction on the display of users, we have signed a contract with Line Group companies to eliminate the need for restrictions on the email address input part, and are preparing a contract to make the system more user-friendly. The case of users who should not be searched, which was included in the request, was resolved by developing a Checker API and incorporating it into Meetup. Now, moving on to the next one. The second issue is the limitation of user authentication. We usually use SAML authentication for our internal system. If a user accesses the internal system and is not authenticated, the user is redirected to the IDP side where he or she is authenticated and redirected back to the service side, which he or she can log in. As long as the master is uploaded, the system can be used as it is without the need for system administrator to keep track of employee transfers or changes, which reduces the burden on the administrator. However, it was necessary to limit the number of users who could log into this system. What we did was to develop a data store on the IDP side, which is a mechanism to check users to see if they can log in. The data store has a list of employees that we are working with, and we use that to determine whether or not they can be authenticated. This is not limited to meetups, but is also used in systems such as Confluence and Jira, which are also used for collaboration among groups. For user authentications, in order to maintain a balance between the convenience of SAML authentication and the limitation of user authentication, we have added the function on the IDP side to determine whether a user can be authenticated or not. So that's what we have done till release. Now, I would like to talk about the future improvement. Currently, each company is using its own authentication infrastructure for each service. As a result, the login screen is aligned with company names. As the number of companies using the system increases, the number of authentication endpoints will increase, and the cost of setting them will also increase. For this reason, we are examining the need to improve the authentication system by using a system that integrates IDPs. We believe that we can speed up the introduction of systems and make it more convenient for users by using integrated IDPs to authenticate systems used in collaboration. We are still looking for the best way to develop a system to be used among the group companies, but by solving the issues that have come to light one by one, we hope to be able to provide a good system. Now I would like to conclude my presentation. Today I have talked about the challenges we faced and their solutions, using the examples of internal system development for collaboration with group companies after management integration. We at the Enterprise IT Center have a mission to continue to provide a comfortable working environment. We believe that this mission applies not only to Line, but also to the system used among group companies. As I stated, some solutions are not really technical ones, but we work on them one by one, and I hope that we can continue to provide a comfortable working environment for the employees of the group. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much.